All right, church. If we have not met, my name is Brandon. I'm one of the pastors here. And I'm actually starting a couple of minutes earlier than I said so because I know both Rustin, Stewart, and John are talking, so every minute counts. But I'm going to just talk through just some membership updates and introduce some new members that have joined the church, some members who've moved away, and of course, celebrating new babies born within the church. And so, yes, we love babies. But we do have some new members that just recently completed the process. And so I noticed not all of them are here, but I will introduce them and share that news with the church. The first is Matthew Basile. He recently became a member. We'll clap for him, even though he didn't start out good and he's not here yet, and so we'll work on that. And Brittany and Troy Gilbrunson just completed membership. And Roger and Kelly McClellan, I saw them. There they are. Hi, Roger. So as you see them on Sunday, see them throughout the week, encourage them and see what God is doing in their lives. We did have some members move away and resign membership. That includes the LeJudas family, the Dolfelmeyer family, and the Wise family. And my favorite part is we have new babies at the church. We've had 5 babies born to members at Coram Deo in the last few months. Eowyn Overton, right back there. Malcolm Reed. Little Malcolm, I don't think Malcolm's here with us, but little Dietrich Martin is. And recently, Otis Juden. I see Grandma and Grandpa back there. And the most recent sheep to the fold, Theodore Brossard, October 5th. And so his dad just sent me a little picture of Theodore snuggling up tonight, so Theodore's doing well. And just the last membership update that I wanted to mention is I know some people are here, newer to Coram Deo, getting involved. We're glad you're with us, glad you're eating and feasting with us tonight. We will be having a membership class starting up, another round of that in November. And so it's going to be Sunday morning during our 9:30 service. We do it for 2 weeks so that you can attend the membership class and then also go to one of the other services. So that's going to start November 13th, and the last membership class will be November 20th. And so feel free to jot that down, put it on your calendar. We're going to announce that a little further as we continue into October. And so welcome new members, welcome new babies, and I would also like to welcome Stuart Davidson with our Finance Committee.
All right, good evening. I am going to do something I don't think I've done before for one of these briefs, and I'm going to start with an apology. So, well, actually, sometimes in the past I've apologized for a long brief or for a boring brief or my bad humor, but anyway, I will. This one is the actual apology is that we discovered something very recently, and when I say very recently, it's within the last 3 days. We discovered it on Thursday. So, which kind of affects some of the stuff in the brief here. So the apology is that we actually presented some incorrect numbers in the last brief, the one that we gave back in June. So what we did was the purpose or reason for that occurred is that last year, or not earlier this year, I should say, at the start of the year, we decided to take the accounting of our finances into house and do it in here on our own program, and so not our own program, but our own process doing it here using the software that we had before, which was from Aplos. We actually had Aplos contracted to do the accounting for us. So when we shifted over to doing that ourselves, there was one aspect of that fell through on some specific expenses. So the numbers that were not accurate were some expense numbers. Now you may say, okay, so what's the bottom line? What does that affect? How does that affect us? Well, one issue is when the numbers we reported for the actual expenses were, back in that report, were lower than what they actually were. I mean, yes, the expenses were expensed out. They were paid. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't pay bills or something, but it was that what we reflected in our accounting reports was not accurate. It was lower than what they actually were. Okay, so that's one thing. Number two is when we set the budget for the next fiscal year, we go back and we look at what we expended in each of the different categories. And if those amounts were not properly captured, they were under-captured, therefore we would have set the expense budget for some categories lower. So I'm going to start with that because that does kind of affect some of the things here, and so I will explain as we go through on that the items, or try my best anyway to explain that on how the items were impacted. So this is the fall brief. So what we do is we close out the previous fiscal year. So the first couple slides are going to be about the previous fiscal year, and then the rest will be other items for the current fiscal year, and et cetera. So if you could put that first slide up. Okay, so this is the closeout, July 21 to June 22. Now, these numbers are accurate, okay, to the best of my knowledge and belief. All right, so these have accounted for. We took those expenses that had previously been uncaptured into our accounting and got them captured in our accounting. Okay, so the numbers on the left, there was no change on those because those are giving numbers. So that's what the money that was given. We had the budget of $750. The actual was $763, so $13,000, almost $14,000 over. So that was good. And then the expense budget on the other side, we've got the $738 was the budget, the actual $722, so it says net expense 15. So it looks like we underexpended by $15,000, but I will throw a caveat in here because the money that we had put in the budget for expense also included over $40,000 for a church plant. Okay, we didn't expend anything for a church plant since we didn't do a church plant, but we have as I'll show in a later slide, we actually fenced those funds off, so we're not like spending those. But just so you know, so because the actual net expense said $15,000, but there were $45,000 that we had budgeted to expend, okay, for the church plant and didn't. So technically, if those $45,000 had been expended, that net expense would have been like $30,000 negative. So just recognize that for going forward here. So but the bottom line, the cash operating savings, we ended the fiscal year at almost $360,000. That operating savings balance includes $130,000, which we set in emergency savings. Okay, and that's money that we do not touch unless there is a bona fide emergency. That's why they call it emergency savings, by the way. And there's the $44,000 in the church plant. That includes that there as well. So those are that's money that we're not, do not intend to touch this time anyway. So next slide, please. So the major categories, the facilities. So you look kind of just to the right for the difference between the budget and actual. Again, these numbers are accurate. So the differences there. So I'll just talk about a couple of things for the ministry. That was just general overages in several categories: kids, youth, music and productions, and bereavement. So that those were over in. So, but not bad. And then the other one looks ugly is the operations with almost $25,000 overage there. So that was church events that we had budget for, like the barbecues, stuff we did for Easter, etc. And so that was well over on those. And then there was the Sunday morning service. So that includes the communion, the donuts, the snacks that we have upstairs for the church volunteers, and all that. We went well over on that one. And the third one was printing. Now, when I went back and looking at how we looked at this in the spring, those were some areas where we did not have accurate expenditure numbers. Okay, specifically on some of those events for the Sunday morning service and some of the other ones, the barbecue and stuff, that we didn't capture those numbers in there accurately. So that's why we didn't think they were that far over, but they are actually that far over for the year. And I just went back today again, one last time to check it out before coming here. So, but that's where those stood. So anyway, that's where we finished with the fiscal year. Still the 738 and 722. So the difference there. Okay, next slide. So this is the where we stand currently, fiscal year to date. So again, now this is where we'll talk about some of the impact of that, the expenditure stuff I talked about. So we set a general fund budget of $66.5. That was to incorporate all of the things that we wanted to do, based on assessment of the expenditures that we had in the spring, and the fact that some of those numbers were off. We would have actually set a higher giving budget than what is up there already, and a higher expense budget. So just recognize that. So these numbers here were what we did in the spring. So these have not been updated. We haven't proposed a new budget. We haven't talked to the elders. None of that. So this is just where we kind of stand now with where we set things in the spring. So you have 133 for the general fund budget. Giving has been 121.5. So we're 11,500 under on the giving. And then you look at the expense budget and the actual, and so we're right on the net expense. There is no money budgeted for a church plant, so there's not going to be any church plant impact over on the expense side. So anyways, that gives us and then the bottom line again is the cash operating savings, $328,000. Again, that again includes the $130,000 in emergency savings and $44,000 for the church plant. Okay, next slide. So the numbers there are where we stood at the end of June 21. June 22 and August of 22. You see the church planting. We added the money in there that we had budgeted for the church plant, so we did put those funds aside. So they were in a separate line for church planting to keep them there fenced off separately. Again, third line down, the emergency savings, and we bumped that up from 105 to 130 because we try to have the emergency savings be twice what our monthly budget is. So we have 2 months worth of budget set aside, and so see the numbers there, and then the operating in general is kind of the money that we have access to for everyday operations. And that has gone down because of things we've done for capital improvements and other things, and obviously any other over expenses. But that's so that's kind of where we stand with the $154,000 for the operating in general. And then we have a scholarship fund, still fine, and the benevolence. It looks like we didn't spend anything, but we did. It's just that we had money go out and we had money come in. And so that balanced out to where it stood. So that's the slide there. Okay, next. So again, this is the current fiscal year. So this is only 2 months, July and August. So this shows where we're at. And we're a little, as you can see, over in facilities and over in operations. And again, why is that? It's because when we looked at the numbers from last year, we didn't have, and set our budget for this year, we didn't have the accurate numbers. And so we based kind of where we're going to be at this year on those numbers, and those numbers were set a little lower than where we were actually expending. So that's where we are at for those numbers that are in the red there. I mean, overall, it still almost balances out perfect at the bottom line with 593 deficit. So. Okay, and then, let's see if there's anything else in that slide. Yep, already talked about it. Okay, next slide, you got it? Okay, this is the giving and attendance trend. So go back for several fiscal years. This recognized, obviously 22, 23 includes 2 months, July and August. So typically those are the summer months when the attendance is lower with people on vacation and trips and everything. So, but that's kind of where we stand. The only part there that's a little concerning, obviously, is the giving, because if this giving right now is $60,750 average for 2 months, and with our budget to be what we really want to do to accomplish everything, we would probably be more in maybe the 67,500 level. We haven't even punched those numbers in yet to figure that out, but it's just a swag for me. But so our expense budget would be higher, so we got a bigger offset now between the giving and the expenses. So that's just the reality of the situation right now where we're at. As you obviously for 2020, 2021, we did not do numbers there since we were doing, COVID impacted everything. So, but anyway, so that's where the numbers currently show. So, next slide. The success stories. So the lease space. Many of you have been over there. That's all fixed up. We got the painting, the flooring, desks, all that stuff is done. That enabled us to move the church staff over there. Youth community to use it. We have the classical conversations class that uses that on Tuesday, which is a good prep for Coram Deo Academy on how we're going to do things for when we actually have the Coram Deo Academy school set up. So, and which is the next line, the consultant for the Coram Deo Academy was funded through a special gift. So that was very good because we were able to get under contract with Concordus, who we are contracting with to get us set up for the Coram Deo Academy. And we that was actually funded all through all but $1,000 of it through a special gift, so that was great. The next one, I have the church building painted external at low cost to the church, with just paint, supplies, man lift, thanks to volunteers. Okay, so it's not, that's like, okay, that is the next thing I'm not lying to you on, but so it's 3/4 of the building, because the back wall on the outside has not been painted yet. So that needs to be sprayed and painted. But Pete Easley, John Adamson were the two guys. So Pete assures me that the backside will get painted, so yes. Now, so that'll be done. So, but yeah, those guys did a great job. If you look at the other three sides, and you don't have to go around the back to look at it. I did it today, but there's not much to look at. All right, so then we had Lindsay Rickabaugh started working full-time in July. Shree Skiles is now working part-time as the custodian here. And if you're wondering, I'm not talking to anybody up in the balcony because there is no balcony, but we did, we have bids, we have everything kind of, that we have laid out for that. The amount that we have that it'll cost, we believe, to do that, based on the bids for everything, is around $85,000. You throw in some overages, whatever, maybe $90,000. So if you say what the issue here that when we get to this point now is that everything that would come out of the church savings. It's not a budgeted thing; it would come out of our savings. So with our savings amount being, from that other slide, was $154, right? The church operating and savings, $154,000. So if we expend that money, that's what that would come out of that. So that would reduce that down by, over half of what we have there. So in the operating and savings. So we just have to we're looking smart at things. Ben and I will be looking at the budget to get accurate numbers for this fiscal year, what we think maybe needs to be done. We always look at the budget in the fall and through the end of the year, and then usually revise it in January. So we'll be taking a look at that. And but in the meantime, Brandon's already cinched up his belt, and we're going to go lean, to some extent as we can here until we have a good handle on where things stand. So that is what I have to say. All right, any questions? Yes. So one of the issues, if you haven't realized this, with COVID is logistics is made a mess of things. So part of the issue is getting the stuff that's needed for that. So Brandon is, the one that's going through that process. We've got the company to do the work, but then you have to get the glass to make the balcony area safe. That was like a long lead time. So we're looking at, much later, many months before we can actually have the materials to make it, because you don't want to tear that out and then just have it sit there while you're waiting for the glass to come, and et cetera. So we're trying to, figure that part out. And then also from just where we stand, expense-wise, when does it make sense to move with doing that? So, and the elders may talk about more about that when they speak. Okay, thank you.
I don't know why I took this. Pastor Ryan.
It's because you're so good looking. We just need more Brandon up here. Well, good evening. I don't get to share at these meetings often, so this is fun. But I wanted to just take a few minutes to talk to you about a project that I've been working on for about a year now. But before I do it, I want to preface this by talking about something that doesn't get a lot of airtime in the church, and that is particularly the evangelical church. And that is symbolism and the impact of art and symbolism on the life of a community. Symbols and art are one of the ways that we participate in culture together. Now, when I say art, your mind might go to something like the Smithsonian or maybe a specific piece of art like the Mona Lisa. And I mean something far earthier than that. If I say the word America, you can probably picture 10, 15 symbols right off the bat. You could rattle them off, like the American flag, songs like Star Spangled Banner and the Statue of Liberty, things like that, things that are part of our shared experience together as Americans. Now, additionally, you can probably think of some of the virtues that go along with those symbols, things like liberty, things like freedom, or at least maybe used to be. And that's not accidental. God actually wired us that way. Eventually, those things start to blend in our heads. God wired us to create things to communicate our story to each other. And as the people of God, that story is unique and important. For the church, we have cultural artifacts. Things like songs especially stand out as the things that bind us together, that tie us generation to generation. In fact, I remember songs I sang growing up as a kid in church. If you sing, "Lord, I lift your name on high," I'm 10 years old again. But we have other symbols too. Just one example, every Sunday we all come here and we hear somebody preach the gospel in front of a 15-foot tall cross. And that's not accidental. The space is preaching to us just as the words are. And they are in service of the words. So every time we worship together, that happens. And we've structured our space like this on purpose. Even churches that pride themselves on not really having an aesthetic, they do the same thing. Just it's the lack thereof that preaches. So as I said in my preface, I want to tell you about a project I've been working on for about a year. And about a year, maybe a little over a year ago, we had the cover. I don't know who remembers the black coverings that were up on those windows. Y'all remember those? Praise God, those are gone. I have loved having natural light in here. At least one other person has too. Even if some weeks I'm lit up like Moses on the mountain and need... If you watch the live stream especially, you know what we're talking about. But anyway, so we had pulled those down. We'd had natural light streaming in here, and about a year ago, we got an email from a gal who's part of the church who asked us, she's like, "Have you ever considered putting stained glass in the windows?" And unbeknownst to her, I had actually, this is a long-time dream of mine. I remember having conversations with John years ago about stuff like this. And I love the traditional church aesthetic. I would like to never, see a church that looks like a club again, if I could have my way. Anyway, many of you probably know Maureen Hosford. Maureen is the one who emailed us. And she is an accomplished stained glass artist, and in her email, she offered to help fill these windows with stained glass if we wanted to. And that is the project that has taken up the better part of the last year, is we decided to take her up on it. So we hired a designer. We are going to be building and installing 4 stained glass windows up here. And I get to actually show you, the whole point of me coming up here is to get to show you what they're going to look like. So, Gabe, if you want to go to the first slide. So, every Sunday, we tell a story together when we gather for worship. We tell the story of the Bible, creation, fall, redemption, restoration. That's the maybe call it the meta-narrative of the Bible. And so each of these windows is going to help tell that story in a visual way. So this first window, you have creation and fall with the hand holding the apple, being wrapped in the snake. Gabe, why don't you go to the next one? Next, you have the cross and the empty tomb and the pinnacle of Christ's work in the Bible itself. Let's go to the next one. And then you have the giving of the Spirit and the sacraments, the bread, the wine, the water, the blood. Let's go to the next one. And then lastly, you have the Lamb on the throne, sitting over the book of life with the 7 seals that only he is able to open. And as I mentioned, and Gabe, you can actually go to the next one. I just mocked them all up so that you could see what they'll probably look like once they're up in there. But we hired a guy, actually a German Baptist designer named Peter Voth. You may be familiar with his work. I'm a big fan of his, and if you want to grab me afterwards, I'd love to tell you the story of how we got hooked up with him, and this ended up happening. Don't have time for it now. But anyway, so the fact that we're doing this project is pretty amazing, and I would also ask you, Maureen is going to start making these this week. And we don't exactly have a specific timeline yet for how long this is going to take to get these up, but I would ask for you to pray for her, particularly her hands. It is a very intensive, physically intensive thing to create stained glass. And as you can see, those are huge. The first window alone has like some what did we find? Like 460 pieces of glass that she has to individually cut out and put together. So pray for her, pray for endurance. I'm excited to get to install these and enjoy them as we worship together in the future, and be reminded of God's story as we hear it preached, and also enjoy the windows that can remind us of that story. So that's it. Thank you.
And Pastor Kim is making his way up here with Pastor Rustin, and so they're going to have some exciting stuff to share with us. And isn't it nice having a walkway that we could actually fit through?
Yes.
Thank you for doing that.
That was for me, I think. Well, I think it was about a week after I had been ordained as a pastor that John said, "Oh, you and Rustin are responsible for creating a private classical education school." Christian, yes. And we said, sure, no problem. The first thing we did is, okay, let's put a core team together, and I'd like to introduce those people tonight. We have Katie and Ross McClellan. Can you stand if you're in here? Oh, there you are. Okay. Russ and Rhiannon Petrick. Rustin Harris and his wife, Brenna. And my wife, Kelly, and me. It's been a fabulous effort. There's been a phenomenal amount of collegiality and unity as we have gone through just an enormous amount of work to come up with this. And at this point, I'd like to thank Ross particularly, because he took the responsibility of taking notes on every meeting. And there have been many times when we go, well, we don't remember what we said last time, and Ross will read it off to us from the notes, and that's been very, very helpful. I'd also like to thank whoever it was that gifted us enough money to hire a church consultant.
Yes.
And if you're here tonight,
Made it possible.
we're very grateful. So it's been exciting to see this thing come to life from nothing to a kernel of an idea to a more robust and filled in concept that we are proud to say we will be launching Coram Deo Academy in the fall of 2023.
Hit the slide, Gabe. This is our official logo for the school.
And I know if we were to ask for questions at this point, we would spend the rest of our time answering those questions. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Rustin, and he's able to answer all your questions in one brief statement.
The answer to all of your questions in one brief statement is what? Oh, double mic. Oh, double mic, it's so intense. The answer to all of your questions will be addressed on November 11th. You can hit the next slide, at our Coram Deo Academy Vision Night, 6:30 to 8 p.m. here. That was a really sneaky way to say, yeah, Q&A tonight? Yeah, let's not stay till 11 o'clock. But we're super excited. We are thrilled to, this was just something we talked about in February, and we actually have a plan to start open enrollment in January. It's pretty awesome. Super exciting. And there, as we've gone through this process already, it's just been so clear there is such a need for this, obviously, but there's also been a lot of people who are excited and want to partner with us. And so one of the things that, I'll put this out there, one of the things that we currently are doing is we are beginning the process of looking for teachers. So if that's something you have a heart for or questions about, do feel free to talk to me. I can point you in the right direction or answer questions about that. That's the only thing I'm going to let you guys ask questions about before the vision night, and only to me, okay? Otherwise, please come to the vision night, and also, please be praying for this endeavor, okay? This is not an easy thing, and this is the kind of thing a church does when we're not thinking about month to month, right? We're not thinking about just, being transient and kind of being here and picking up and leaving. This is a generational legacy move that our church is making that could have massive impact to saturate Kitsap County, which is our goal as a church, to saturate Kitsap County with the gospel. Okay, that's the goal behind this school, and we're super thrilled about it, super excited. Concordus is such an amazing partner, really super helpful to know how we would do it without Heather and the Concordus team. So I'm very excited for you guys to meet them at the Vision Night, but we need your prayers. Pray that God would supply the things that are needed for this this endeavor to be fruitful and to glorify His name. Pray also for wisdom, as there's still some decisions that need to be made, but overall, and also pray for the people to step up that want to serve in this way for the school. So save your questions for Vision Night. That's pretty much it. All right? Right on.
Can you put that graphic back up there? It's just cool looking. Not that one. That one. There we go. That look good. Looks really good. All right, if you don't know me, my name is John, and I'm one of the pastors planted here in 2004. Tonight, I want to share some things with you that are just encouraging, and we're going to also talk about things that we're looking at in the future. But I do want to talk about the things that are encouraging right now. And it's kind of funny when Stuart came up here, and it is always funny. Is Stuart the best guy at financial updates? Thank you, guys. And is Ben here? I can't see you, Ben. Ben's at the Sounders game. Okay, well, whatever. Hopefully they lose. No, I'm kidding. They tied. They tied? You can tie. That's so lame. Oh, my gosh. All right. So it's really encouraging when the most sobering financial update that begins with an apology is that we have $340,000 in the bank instead of $365,000, right? Like, what a bummer. No, things are still good, and so we're thankful for God's provision and figuring those numbers out as we move forward. It's encouraging to hear the update from the school. I was looking back at my notes, and Rustin had mentioned this, but it was in February that we stood up here of this year and said, we are going to start a Christian school. We believe that education was a massive part of discipleship, and part of that was just watching what's happening culturally in our community and across our country, feeling the need that we need to be more intentional in discipling young kids, that is like Russ said, a multi-generational investment in terms of our own community. And so we had never started a school before, but we said in February, so this is 8 months ago, we're going to try and do this. And we didn't ask anybody for a single penny that night. But God provided, as Kim said, an anonymous check that almost paid the entire cost of having a consultant, which has been really, really helpful in jumping through the hoops and getting us to the point where now 8 months later we can say, hey, we've got an info night and enrollment's going to be in January 2023-ish, and in the fall we're going to launch that school. That is an incredible thing. So I hope that you are encouraged by that. That's not something that we could ever pull off in our own strength or our own ability, but it's something that God has done, that He's led us in, and so that is incredibly encouraging to witness and to see. some of you know this last week I was in Denver and I went to a conference, an Acts 29 North America conference with pastors from all over our country and some other countries as well. There's this communist country north of us. There were some guys who got to come down from that as well. So that was really good. And so it's always good to be with other guys. And sometimes it can help you understand what God is doing in your own community. It gives you a little bit of context. And so I talked with a lot of guys, and some of the things that I heard, not from the stage, but privately in the hotel was one, across the board, 30, 40, 50, 60% of church attendance is gone. Just, they're not there, don't know what happened, haven't recovered from the whole COVID thing. And part of me was grieved to hear that, and yet incredibly grateful that that has not been our experience at all. God has been incredibly faithful to us, has preserved our church, and not only protected us from loss, but has continued to bring new people and new families to our church family here. And so that is a unique thing. What's happening here is not necessarily what's happening across the board nationally. And so we need to appreciate that and have the eyes to see that and to be thankful to God for the way that He has protected us and that He has provided us. The other thing I heard, again, not publicly, but in private, was appreciation for the position that the elders of Coram Deo Church have taken over the last 2 and 3 years, the resources that we have provided and made public, because there's not a lot of churches, especially in our network, that have been vocal about these issues. And so it was interesting to have these private conversations. You're like, hey, thanks. It's like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's great. So I want to thank you guys for just being part of that. We feel your support. This is a family effort here. And so the things that we are doing and we are learning, other people are watching and they are being encouraged by that and being encouraged to stand and to be vocal and to get active. And so that's incredibly encouraging for me to see and to hear. I also want to say just thank you. All the elders are going to come up here in a moment, but if you're an elder at our church, will you stand up right now? Just stand. Here we go. Where's D Money? Your knees working, buddy? Yeah. I want you to know that these are great men. They're great men. And not all. Okay, you guys can sit down now. I know that not all of them get up here on a Sunday morning and preach, but the preaching and the leading of the church is something that we do together. And if we didn't have the support that we have in our elder team, I don't know how we would survive. And when I was again connecting with these pastors, I was hearing stories, and not every pastor has an elder team around him that supports him. I met one individual who had planted a church, loved his community. His elder team went woke and fired him and kicked him out. And I'm like, what would you do, right? It's so crushing. And so very, very grateful for the men who are leading and overseeing this church here, the elders, and they'll be up in a moment for Q&A, and you can ask them all the annoying questions that you want. That'd be great. So many encouraging things, and I hope that you are encouraged in those things as well. I want to talk about some of the things that are coming up. Some of these are just detail things, and then you're going to see some of these are kind of bigger picture, bigger vision things. So we have been promoting for the last couple weeks Fall Festival, and Fall Festival is an event that we do. We're hosting it at our space here, and we invite the community to come in. We're opening our space. This is hospitality. This is corporate hospitality to our community. The last year we did this, and we had about 600 people come by, and so it's a great opportunity for young families in our community. They come, they have a fantastic time. We feed them, we get to meet them, bless them, and so this is a huge event for us. And we've been saying from the front every Sunday, we need your help, because this isn't like the staff puts this on for the community. We're trying to lead the church to put this event on for our community. And so we have had a number of people sign up, but we still need more people to sign up. And one of the the things, if you're here for any amount of time, you'll know that Coram Deo signs up late. Am I right? Right? You show up to service late, show up to family meetings late, and we sign up late. So it makes it really hard for us to prepare when we don't sign up on time. So I'm just going to ask you at the end of our time, you're going to go into the foyer, and there's a sign-up sheet on the wall. It would be a huge help for you if you signed up tonight, whether it's serving the night of the event or prepping for the event or whatever. That just helps us know where exactly we are at. So please, when we're done, take some time, check out the signups in that up on the wall in the foyer. That would be a huge help to us. One of the things, I don't know if you specifically said this, Stuart, but the giving was down a little bit over the summer, right? And so you may have saw that graphic. One of the things that we are doing that's partially in response to that and partially just in response to trying to be faithful. Many of you know before the whole COVID thing happened, on Sundays we would call people to communion, and we'd also call people to give their tithes and their offerings. How many of you here were here when we did that pre-COVID, okay? Okay, so then when COVID hit, we did online for a while, and we came back and got back into the normal swing of things, but we never brought back that giving piece on Sunday. And so one of the things that we are going to be working through is how do we reincorporate that? Now, I know a lot of you give faithfully online, and you're going to keep doing that, and that's just fine. But one of the things you can expect to hear in a future Sunday is a call to give. We're not going to be passing the plate. It's not that. But we will be calling people to obedience in that. And on your handout, you get it every single week. It tells you how you can give. There's a box in the foyer. It's just something that we haven't spoken about. And so in the following Sundays, you're probably going to hear somebody say something about that. And so we wanted you to know about that beforehand and not find out on the Sunday when you show up. So we're just going to go back to the way that we were functioning pre-COVID. And that should be coming soon. Some of you are going to hate me for saying this, but Christmas is coming. And we need some rain. Because like my October rhythm is I start sorting the lights. Like last night, I had to wait till like 8 o'clock at night because it was dark and it felt like it wasn't 80 degrees. Because sorting lights when it's 80 degrees is just no good. So anyway, so Christmas is coming, and this year is going to be a little bit unique, and so I wanted to give you guys some updates on what that's going to look like. If you've been here with us, you know that during Advent, we invite people to read the text for the Sunday in different languages. When the angel shows up to announce the good news to the shepherds, it's good news of great joy for all the peoples. And one of the ways that we capture that is by hearing the scriptures read in different languages. And so we've been doing this for a number of years. We will continue to do this. What I want to do is just if you speak another language, please consider volunteering to read one of the texts. We have 3 services every Sunday, and we have a different person typically read at every one of those services. So if you speak a different language, please let us know that you would be interested in doing this. And I'm gonna audible here. If you happen to have a really cool British accent, but you still technically speak English, we would love to hear that because it sounds awesome. So let us know. Let us know. You know I'm right? Would you not just love to hear a British accent? Yeah, you would. Okay, so if you speak a different language, please let one of the pastors know. Where's Nettie in the back? Nettie's back there. Lindsay's next to her, right back there. Let us know. As we get closer, we may make some announcements. We just wanted to give you a heads up now to do it. And it is one of my favorite things about the Christmas season is hearing the scriptures in different languages. So let us know if you do that. You might not know this yet, but Christmas falls on a what? A Sunday. All right. So some churches got to figure this out, but we're going to announce this to you. We will be having our usual Christmas Eve services. We'll be doing 4 of them, like we always do, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And we'll be doing the online registration, asking you to just sign up just so you can see which service is full and which service has space in. We don't do anything with information at all, don't care. And then the next day, Sunday, we will be gathering for church on Christmas morning. Because it's Sunday. Okay. So we will be here. We will have a 9:30 and 11 o'clock service on that morning. So just so you know, way ahead of time, that's how we're going to do that. There have been seasons in which the elders have asked you to enter into a time of prayer and fasting. And what this has looked like for our church is that we ask you, if you can, on Thursday, basically Wednesday night, you have your dinner, you go to bed. Thursday, you wake up, you skip breakfast, you skip lunch, and then Thursday evening, you would break your fast with a meal with your family or whatever. So we're asking you to join us for another season that we're going to be praying and fasting, and this would be starting this Thursday, and then we'll be ending on Thanksgiving Day, because you don't want to fast on Thanksgiving Day, right? That's like the most appropriate time to break that time. So if you can participate in that, we would love for you to be part of that. We know that some of you can't do that for work reasons. Some of you can't do that for health reasons. That's fine. Find a way to participate in it. That's great. But we are going to be we're calling the church into this time of prayer and fasting. And we're going to be asking for two specific things. The first thing is going to be conversions. We're asking that God would save people through the preaching and teaching of His Word. We're asking for that specifically in Kitsap County. And so we want you to pray that people would come to faith in Christ. The other thing that we are going to ask you to pray for has to do with buildings and our future and what God has for specifically the buildings in this complex, meaning those two buildings that are adjacent to us here. If you didn't know, the culture in general is growing more hostile to churches. Do you guys know this? You may have picked up on it, okay? And one of the things that means is that in the coming years, it is going to be more difficult for churches to rent and to lease space. So consider what it would be like for a church to try and rent a space from a school now. 5 years ago, that was one thing. 5 years from now, it's probably going to be just about impossible. And so we understand that things are changing culturally. We understand that things are changing socially. And we know that owning space is really important in terms of securing our future. It's important for churches. I've heard multiple people say this, and the elders have dreamed about this, that we would love to own this entire complex, all three buildings in this space. The guy who built this space was a Christian, and his dream was to have all of the space to be used by the church. And so we would love to have the entire complex. It's not very hard to see, it's not very difficult to see a future in which all of the buildings are actively being used. This can easily be set aside specifically for youth. We could have that building as a sanctuary and foyer and offices, and we could have one building that was specifically set up for a school. That's not hard to imagine. We're not far from being in a position in which those would be realistic needs. Now, that being said, one of the things that we have said multiple times is that the elders have absolutely zero interest in strapping the church body with a massive mortgage. We do not want to do that at all. We do not think that that's wise. And we don't want to go there. It's one of the reasons that we do 3 morning services. It's one of the reasons that our staff are here at 6 o'clock on Sunday mornings, because by doing 3 services, it allows us to be in this space, which we own outright, right? And so it helps us from taking on financial burden. So we are trying to avoid that. But we do want to pray. We want to ask God to open a door and provide for us in terms of the buildings here, and whether that's getting one building or getting both of the buildings. We're asking God to give us wisdom and to give us provision in this. Now, there's a little bit of a backstory to this, because we didn't actually look for this building. The owners of this building came to us, and I've told this story before. We had no money, they said, we don't care. We want you to meet here. We'll charge you what you can afford. We did that for a couple years. We grew. They said, hey, we want to sell you this building. Again, we said, that's really, really nice, but we have no money and we can't afford to buy it. And they says, well, we'll set the sale price so that your mortgage payment is what you're paying for rent right now. And they basically gave us a 40% discount on the building so that we could get in here, right? That was not something we did. That was something that God was before us. He opened the door, and we walked into it, and we received it as a gift. It was only a couple months ago that we were praying that God would open up some space over here to release pressure so we could get offices over there, and we'd have the opportunity to put a balcony and then have some space that we could designate for the youth. And that was consistently a closed door. We had conversations with the owner. It wasn't working. Literally, the elders had an elder meeting and prayed about it. And within 24 hours, the guy's like, hey, you want to come in? We're like, yes, we do. That would be great. It was something that God provided for us. I mentioned that we said we felt God was calling us to start a school, and we had no money to do that. And somebody wrote a $20,000 check anonymously and gave it to us so we could do this. So there's a theme of God providing for us, being ahead of us, opening the doors for us so that we can walk into that. And so we're asking God to do something like that. We're asking God, do you want us to be in this space? Is this where we need to be? Do you want us to have 2 of these buildings? Do you want us to have 3 of these buildings? And we're asking God to provide the money. I think that these buildings, if they were to, the guy is open to sell them, and he wants 2 probably $1 million each for them. Is that right? About that, which is probably a little bit more than they're worth. But that's what he's looking to get, which means for $4 million, you could own the entire complex. Now, $4 million sounds like a lot. It's basically 3 houses in East Bremerton, right? It's 2 months of gas in your Suburban. It's so. We're not going to do a thermometer. We're not making commitments. We're not saying you need to do this, but we're praying to God to say, what do you want? Right? If God wants to provide those resources, then he's going to do that. If he wants to open doors, he can do that. As I was thinking about this week, I was like, we could pray to God to say, God, would you give us wisdom and direct us and open a door? And he could be, yeah, there's this building on the other side of Bremerton I'm going to give you, right? And we're like, we don't even know about that. So God can do whatever it is that he wants to do, and it seems to be the way that he's worked for us in our church community. And also, you think about, like, what is the story of our people? The Red Sea. Like, the Red Sea parted for his people. And think about Jericho. And you're going to go take the city. And how are you going to take this city? Where are you going to march around it and blast trumpets and pray and sing? Does that sound like a great strategy for taking a city? Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. It turned out to really be a good strategy, didn't it? Because when God is leading a people, he provides in those kinds of ways. So that's the kind of thing that we're praying about. We're asking for God to move in a very clear and obvious way to give us wisdom. God, what do you have for the space and for our church? And to also be providing in terms of the finances to make that work. So we're asking you to do that. We're going to be doing this again from starting this week. We'll do it through the rest of October. We'll do it through the majority of November, and then we will bring that to a close on Thanksgiving Day. And we will have our Thanksgiving Eve meeting, and maybe we'll have something to share at that point. I don't know, no promises, but we're asking you to pray for those things during this time.